Gosh.
Can't hear me, but you can hear me now. And now you can hear Days Off Gaming too. Oh, maybe you can't hear Days Off Gaming. Oh no. Okay, hold on. Let's see here. Let's get settings. Oh shit. I should We'll do it live. Fuck it. See, Discord, voice and video. That's why. Voice chat. Now try Days.
Hello, it's me, Days.
There's Days. He is on the internet.
You can hear me.
You can
Hello,
hear
I'm
him.
I'm on Twitch.
He's on Twitch.
TV.
TV. Indeed.
The reigning champ.
Yes. Did you win last year? I can't remember. I have a bad memory.
Yes, I did win last year. It was close. It was 15. I think I got 15 out of like 25, and you got 13. So it was close.
Oh man, I'm scared. I'm terrified. I better
yours to win this year.
I know it is all mine. I guess. I guess I better win and beat you and all that, and not lose the title of winning the games of the awards and all that. And I gotta get my
the game awards predictor.
Yes, I gotta get my hydrate in for Briggs, even though he can't see me. Rest assured, Idiot Brigade, I am hydrating right as we speak, right now.
I will also hydrate while you hydrate. There's a double hydrate.
Double hydrate for you, Briggs. There we go.
So not only is the title on the line of Game Awards Predictor, but we do have a wager.
We do. It's a $10 gift card.
$10 gift card, and the loser, whoever loses, has to have, what was it again? We got 6 months of
6 months
on our Be Right Back screens, our Stream Starting Soon screens. Something that says either, was it our logo with a text that says either Lunar or Days, whoever was losing.
Yeah.
Is an amazing, was it streamer /
person? Human, something
person,
like, yes. So it would say, so
we'll figure it out as we go, but
on our Be Right Back screen, it would have to say for 6 months, whoever loses, if I lose, I'll have to say Days Off Gaming is an amazing streamer / human on my Be Right Back screen for 6 months in a row. And so I have to buy him a $10 gift card to Steam, or either vice versa.
Yes. Correct. $10 Canadian was
$10 Canadian was what we decided on. So
I'll figure out how much I have to actually give. I'll do the math. So should we say, because it's 6 months, should we say it's just January through start of January to the end of June next year. Those
Yes.
first 6 months. So we won't do December because I probably won't be streaming that much in the end of the year, so it would be wasted time.
January to June, you bet.
Sounds good.
Excellent. I don't want to get started quite yet. I don't know on the awards. I wanted to see. Let me open a different window. Let me see here. I want to see what my Twitch recap looks like. Because I wanted
Get
to
that recap.
I want to open my
I know what mine looks
Gmail.
like.
Okay, we're gonna bring this over here. This is the Twitch recap 2024. PogChamp, choose your recap. Let's go. Let's go viewer first. Best times of the year. Hours watched 1,163.
It's a lot of hours.
Distinct days visited 328. That's literally almost all year. I didn't know just chatting would be my top category of the year. Top categories of the year, just chatting.
Yeah, it was mine too. I think, yeah, because I think a lot of people just chuck on just chatting at the start of their stream, and so you always get it, and then they just change it to whatever category they're playing.
Yeah.
So you end up picking up a lot of just chattings. But yeah, crazy.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 14 was number 2. Fortnite number 3, Stardew number 4, Elden Ring number 5. Most watched channel, Anxious Birdie. Look at that.
Another one. Oh, look at this, stuck in at number 5.
There we go. It would have been closer to number 1 if you had streamed more, because I'm usually there, my friend.
Of course, yeah. That's majority of my streams you're watching there. So
I gotta take a screenshot of this. I
think there is a button to like share it at the end. You can save the image. It has like a summary, but you can screenshot that part as well.
$8,947 chats sent. Top emails of the year. Look at these emotes.
Oh hell yeah! Those are some quality emotes. Lunar jams.
Number 1, hype happenings of the year. Subs gifted to hype cranes contributed to 8. Mod of the year. I'm mod of the year days. It says right here.
Oh, right there. That's you can't argue with that. 100% mod of the year. You're my mod of the year.
Chat send us a mod. You're my mod of the year days. Channels moderated to. I could have sworn I moderated more channels than 2. Weird. Because there is.
Yeah, because
yours, Birdie's, DG.
Yeah, Kitty.
Kitty streamed at least once, and so did.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That must be not accurate.
Share my recap. I will share this. I guess I will share it to X, even though I'm not on there anymore. Oops. I don't like that. Let's do this. I just want to
I forgot what X looked like. I haven't logged in. I deleted it from my phone, and I stopped going to it on my desktop. It's been nice.
I guess CG's not on here. Whatever. I'll just put it up. All right. We'll also share it to Blue Sky. That's what we really want to share it to.
Hell yeah. I need to tag people on Blue Sky. I didn't tag enough people.
Is Sarah Jane on there? I'm gonna see if Sarah Jane's on here. Probably not. Actually, I'll do this later. Sorry.
No worries. I'm just
all right.
out.
Let's see. Let's see what else we got here.
You can get the streamer recap as well. So
Oh
that
yeah,
was a viewer.
streamer recap. That's what I meant to say. I meant to say streamer recap. I streamed 200 hours,
Solid.
101 streams, distinct day
Wow.
streams 83, total hours watch 957. Top categories of the year. Look at that. Deadlock made the list.
Deadlock made the list.
Final
Power World.
Fantasy 14.
You must have streamed a lot of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I did. Elden Ring, Deadlock, Power World, Prey. Top stream of the year. Your top streams reached 29 viewers.
Nice.
My top stream reached 29 viewers? Damn, I didn't realize that.
That's good.
Top tags of the year, responsive, mental health, Canada. 15,980 chats sent. Damn. Thank y'all.
That's a lot of chatting.
Biggest fans of the year. These guys are right here. Briggs is number 1. Look at that.
Briggs.
Look at that. Hell yeah. Look at these guys.
I'm on my own line. I just get my own line. That's great. Just special down there.
Oh my god. Look at this.
Just go back up to your top emotes. Just scroll up a little bit.
Big wet dumps.
Big wet dumps. Hell yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
That's what it's all about.
Collaborations of the year 2. No, and top collaborators, Days Off Gaming, and we're collaborating right now. I forgot to put.
Exactly.
Hold on. Make it number. Let's make it 3.
Oh, yeah. You can tag.
Days. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think I had 2 as well because I think that was the only time I collaborated.
Does it show you listed?
It does.
Or does it show you like on Twitch now with like the link to your page?
Yeah, it's got a link. Yep.
Okay. All right. Raids received 16. Who rated me? Anxious Birdie. DG. Stealth. Thank you guys. Raid sent the opposite of 16. 61.
Whoa.
Crazy. Who did you rate? Anxious Birdie. Don't give a buck. The Jellyfish Queen. Hey guys,
Nice.
That's a lot of hype.
It's a lot of birdie raids.
That is a lot of birdie raids.
So it's easy to raid birdie because she's on a lot.
Yeah,
I think I rated her the most too for that reason.
Clips of the year.
Had a couple.
My top featured clip of the year. Oh, I remember this one. I don't want to watch it because that's cringe.
Which one is that? The one trail hype.
It's super cringe. I cringe out at my own clips.
Oh, you clipped it as well. I thought that was one I clipped.
No, I clipped it.
Nice.
I clipped it. Points spent on my channel 212,000. God damn. Okay, enough jacking myself off. Just kidding. Let me get this saved.
Rating action star of the year.
And post to the Discord.
I forget what mine was. I think mine was just like action. Yeah, mine was just action star. I didn't rate enough. I'm not a rating action.
Oh, you gotta raid.
No, just gotta stream more. I gotta raid more. Funnily enough, I had Dead Space in my top categories this year and last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I played it a bit last year and then I finished it this year.
Oh, wow.
Because I played that whole game on stream, so I don't do that with every game that I play. I think Silent Hill was my top one because that was like 20 hours all on stream.
All right, let's see. Nanix, what's going on, dude? How are you doing? How are you doing, Nanix? Oh, okay. Should we get started on the
yeah,
on the old
let's see
predictions?
see what we got.
Yeah, I'll let you go first for most anticipated game. What could it be?
Okay, so I'll read out the category. I'll read out the nominees, and then I'll say what I chose, and maybe give a brief reasoning. Then we can go through it that way. Okay, most anticipated game, as you can see on the screen. Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Is that actually what's called?
It's called On the
Ghosts-
Beach, yes.
Yeah, Ghosts of Yotai. Grand Theft Auto 6, never heard of it.
Never heard of that
Metroid Prime
one.
4 Beyond, and Monster Hunter Wilds.
All right.
I have selected, unsurprisingly, so obviously a lot of these categories were very difficult. This one felt like pretty straightforward.
Yes.
It's, as we've joked about, it's got to be Grand Theft Auto 6. I mean, if
Yeah.
anyone votes against that, I will be very surprised. As much as I probably am looking forward to Ghost of Yotai just as much.
How do you make
So
it on the
it's
side?
gonna be sick.
How do you make it on the side like that? I don't know.
That is a good question.
Mine's in the middle for some reason.
Format alignment.
Oh,
Control Shift L. Control Shift L.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
That is mine as well, Days. Grand Theft Auto 6 is also mine.
Well, I can't remember if we bold them. I can go back.
I'll bold mine as well.
Okay, we can bold it.
That is also mine. Alrighty. I'm gonna have to bring up my list now. Cause wait, hold on. I gotta bring up a separate.
You just you knew what you chose on that one.
Yeah.
You didn't actually have to have your list in front of you.
No. Let's see, Google Sheets, bring that up here, sign in. It's gonna make me sign in. Oh no, we're good. Making sure I'm not showing this on stream.
Do you want to maybe just zoom out a little bit so we can see more of the sheet on stream? I don't know if it's
how's that
readable.
It's gonna take a minute.
Yeah. Yep, all good.
Perfect. All right. Do you want me to start with this one and read off the list?
Sure. Yeah, we can just alternate.
Best adaptation. Let's see. Metroid Prime 2. I agree. Nanix. If I want to give, yes, Metroid Prime 4, yes, as well. I should say. If I want to say my most anticipated game, Nanix, it's definitely Metroid Prime 4. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, we're not just picking what we want. It's what we think.
We're picking what we think. We're picking what we think is gonna win. What I want.
There's lots of them where I would choose differently to what I've actually.
Yes, what I want is Metroid Prime 4 personally. As well, Nanix. I can agree with you there.
I mean, I haven't played Death Stranding, but the rest of those, I actually haven't played Metroid either. So yeah, I mean, Monster Hunter Wilds looks pretty sick, but it's coming out soon, so it's not really that anticipated.
Yeah, one sec. Hey Google, turn on the RGB strip. Oh, hey Google, turn on the RGB strip. I just need more light in here.
Okay.
Yeah, shut up, Google. All right. Let's see. I voted GTA 6 as well for that. Okay, so what we think is going to win. And also, Nanix, I do need to play more Marvel Rivals. I'll play that with you sometime. I know we were going to play together, so we should get that going on sometime soon. Because that game is fun.
Because I want to play some more of that too.
Yeah, Days. Yeah, we should get Days in on that as well. And everyone on that, because that game is awesome. All right. Best adaptation. What we think is going to win best adaptation. We have Arcane, Fallout, Knuckles, Like a Dragon, Yakuza. Like a Dragon, Yakuza, the Pirates one, right? Is it?
This is the TV show.
Oh, right. Tomb Raider, the Legend of Lara Croft. Okay, so do you want to go with what you voted for? I have mine already listed. I can go with mine first if you want.
Yeah, if you read out the category, you can go first.
I voted Arcane. I think Arcane is going to win this. It's going to win this one. It's going to win this one.
Okay, so out of all of these, I've literally only watched one of them. I know Arcane is really well thought of and people love it, but I have chosen Fallout.
You've chosen Fallout. Okay, that was
I
my
think
that was my next one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be between those two. To be fair, I think Yakuza Like a Dragon, the TV show, wasn't well received. I haven't heard anything about the Tomb Raider thing. And Knuckles,
I heard a
think
little bit
people
about
kinda
Tomb
liked
Raider,
it.
but yeah,
Yeah,
I went with Arcane. I'll put my list in
I think
there.
those are both solid choices. It could be either, but
Oops.
Fallout made a bit of a splash, so and it's the one I've seen. So choose that one.
Yes. Oops. I went with Arcane. I'm a little biased because I've been watching Arcane as well. To be
Yeah,
honest
I
with you,
mean,
I've been watching Arcane lately.
I'm biased as well because it's the one I've seen. So
Yeah.
and I really liked it. And I'm not even the biggest Fallout games fan, so
Right.
I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, but Fallout's really
Uh,
good. It is a really good show.
Yeah, they did a really good job with it, I thought. All right, should we move on?
Sure, you want to list off the
Yep.
next one, which is best
Next
multiplayer.
one, next category, best multiplayer. We have Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Helldivers 2, Warhammer 40K.
What is this category though,
Space Marine
Days?
2.
What is this category?
Best multiplayer.
Okay, yeah.
I said that, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, you're good. We got Super Mario Party Jamboree and Tekken 8.
So
Now, yeah, this was a tough one. For me, it was between Call of Duty, Helldivers, and Warhammer. I haven't played Super Mario, and I haven't played Tekken. Where are we in the stock? And Helldivers and Warhammer, as good as their multiplayer are, it's more just co-op, obviously. And Call of Duty has the actual competitive multiplayer, and so I've given the nod to Call of Duty because that is a really good Call of Duty, and I think people really liked it.
okay, another difference that we had apparently. I thought like my personal one would probably be Tekken 8 because it's the one I played most with my buddy. That's my personal choice. It would be Tekken 8, but not my vote.
Sure.
I voted for Helldivers 2 just because of how much of a splash that game made this year. I didn't really care for it that much compared to most people. Like I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was like, oh, I'm moving shit around now. I didn't think it was like as good as everyone thought it was. Just personally, my own personal preference in game. I'm trying to move this over. Not moving over for some reason.
Just trying to
The alignment. Format.
Column alignment, maybe.
Left Control Shift L. There we go.
Yeah, I'll leave it to it.
But I think it's going to be Helldivers 2 that wins this one. And Days does have nasty aim, Nanix. His aim, he's got that nasty New Zealand aim.
I need to play more Call of Duty too. That was I enjoyed the few games I played of that. Just haven't had the time. I need to finish the campaign too.
But yes,
Helldivers would probably be like my personal choice because I loved like that game is a game that is best multiplayer. Like it's not the same game if it's not multiplayer.
I like it
does
multiplayer.
Give it maybe a bit of an edge. Yeah, like that is the way you play that game.
That's the problem. I don't play a lot of games multiplayer
as well.
Oh really? I thought Warhammer was fucking awesome single player. I love going through that single player.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you can enjoy that single player, but I think it also
benefits.
Benefits from the multiplayer with friends and stuff. Yeah, for sure. But again, that's another good choice. I think it could be either of them.
Here's one.
It could also be Warhammer as well.
Yeah, it could be Warhammer as well. So we could both.
What's it? Like it could. I think the only one it probably isn't going to be is Super Mario Party. So that's what's going to be.
Sorry, Dan Riker. Sorry, Dan.
He hated that game.
Yeah, he hates Super
one.
Mario Party. He hates Mario Party.
Known Mario Party hater, Dan Riker.
Best sports racing games.
Oh, real competitive category. That I haven't played.
Yeah, I have played one of these games. And it was my original first choice. Was
All right, list them off.
Okay. The list goes: best sports racing is F1 24, EA Sports FC 25, NBA 2K 25, and Top Spin 2K 25, and WWE 2K 24.
Right, and which one have you chosen?
Well, I originally chose WWE, but I last minute picked NBA 2K25.
Interesting.
Originally my choice was WWE 2K24 because that's my favorite game on this list.
Yeah.
But that's not the list. That's not the one that's not going to be I personally think that's not going to be the one that people vote for, because
I think there'll be a lot of people that would vote for it just because they probably haven't played much else. But
yeah, I don't know.
It's a tough one. It's a tough category because I feel like a lot of people that vote in these things, aren't big sports game guys. At least the ones that I know of. There's probably a bunch that I don't know of that probably are into it. But
I also look at like the audience votes too, because like a lot of the audience will be like, they'll clamor together and be like, "Oh, I really want NBA 2K25 to win," and if that gets a shit ton of votes, then that's kind of like why I voted for it.
Okay, well that's interesting because I had originally chose EA Sports FC 25. And then I heard someone somewhere say, "Oh, I don't think that's a very good. Like, I think it's not been that well received for a EA, FIFA football game." So at the last minute, I changed to NBA 2K25.
Oh my god! Interesting.
Because I was just like, "Oh, what are people going to vote for? They probably have more likely to play the NBA game than."
Yeah, I thought that was gonna, because that's like the one that all the sports guys always talk about is like the NBA games.
Yeah, I was just thinking like it's American leading sort of like leaning audience in terms of the people that are voting, perhaps. Are more likely to pick an NBA game over a football game. That was literally my thing. I was like, maybe the WWE game, but I don't think enough people are playing F1 or Top Spin.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? But okay, so that's another one we matched on. So that's a free pass on that one.
I was worried that we pick all the same ones.
I think we'll have a few different. We definitely will pick a few of the same ones because some of them, sort of lean that way. Especially the first. I thought you were going to pick Fallout as well, to be honest. All right, next category: best sim/strategy. The nominees are Age of Mythology Retold, Frostpunk 2, Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, Mana Lords, and Unicorn Overlord. And I don't really know what that one is.
I remember that one. That's a Jano Choa tile game. That's a tile game. That's
okay, it's a tile game.
It's a Jano Choa, if you will.
And this is another one where I initially picked something and changed it because I was thinking, maybe not enough people have played that one. Because of these games, I think I've played actually 3 of these 5. But the one I have chosen and landed on is Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess.
Another difference.
I was originally leaning Frostpunk 2 because I played a bit of that game and really liked it. I played Kunitsugami and didn't love it. It didn't grab me. I think it's a neat concept, but it just didn't grab me. And I know a lot of other people that I've heard on podcasts and stuff do really like that game, which is why I decided to change.
Oh, yeah.
I've not heard anyone talking about Frostpunk.
Right. That's a good argument.
And Mana Lords. Yeah.
Do you want to just make it Kunitsugami
this is a tough category. I feel like. Why is that?
Like just because it's bleeding over into the other column, but we could just leave it like that if you want.
Oh, I can just extend the column.
Oh, perfect! There you go. Look at that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that's cool. I didn't know you could do that. That's crazy.
There we go.
Go ahead. Sorry.
All right. What have you chosen?
You love. Welcome on in, Grungy. Good to see you. How are you doing? You loved Unicorn Overlord. I gotta play that game because it looks pretty sick.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I didn't even remember what kind of game it was. I played Mana Lords as well. Another game that didn't really grab me. It seemed cool, but I didn't stick with it.
So what I chose was Frostpunk 2.
Ooh, interesting.
I chose that because I thought because of recency bias, people would vote for it. You know, it's the most recent of these games. As far as I know,
It is a great game. I think it is. Yeah, Age of Mythology maybe came out recently. The remake, whatever remaster.
Yeah,
I can't remember which came out first.
there we go. That's why I went with Frostpunk 2. I honestly think Frostpunk 2 is going to win this. That's just my personal thought. But you know what? Kunitsugami...
It was my favorite game. It was my favorite game out of these 5. So.
Nice.
I'd be happy to see it win.
Kunitsugami was my second choice that I thought would win. But I also haven't really...
I like how we would...
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to call you back. I think we have a bit of a delay. I'll be 1 sec. I'll call you right back. Okay.
No worries.
Get Days back in here. Yeah, I think we had a little bit of a delay. Yeah, we should be good now.
Yeah. All right, sorry about that.
That's okay. It's probably on my end. All right. So I went with Frostpunk 2 for that one. I personally, just hearing Kitty, what she said about that game, she was talking all kinds of hype about Frostpunk 2, so I gotta go with that one. Nice. Did she really?
Yeah, she was talking about Frostpunk, and I was like, well, I'll play Frostpunk 2 because it just came out.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
That's the only reason I played it.
Nice, dude.
Shout out to Kitty.
Shout out to Kitty. Let me give Kitty a... Guys, give Feral Kitty a follow. She's a good friend of mine. Best friend of mine. Probably my best friend. So guys, give Feral Kitty a follow because she's awesome.
I like how we were both tossing out between those 2 games though, because that's it was either going to be one of Kunitsugami or Frostpunk for me. So
yeah.
Good choices.
Yes, same, yeah. And it's rad as fuck. It's like Final Fantasy Tactics meets Suikoden. Oh my god, that sounds fucking awesome, Grungy. I just started playing Final Fantasy Tactics because Culinary recommended it. I was thinking I might actually stream some of it too.
I've never played it, but I hear good things.
Next category, my time to go again, I think.
Yep, go for it, yep.
Best family game. And for best family game, we have Astrobot, Princess Peach Showtime, Super Mario Party Jamboree, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and The Plucky Squire. All right,
What's the Plucky Squire doing on there? Damn thing.
Yeah, I know, right?
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's fine. That's fine, dude. So what I went with is I honestly think it should win every category it's in. Oh shit, I just gave it away, but never mind. Oops, but Astrobot, come on. That's your category, sorry.
There we go.
Astrobot, perfect.
That's a very good choice.
I honestly think Astrobot should win that award.
Game.
It's a great family game. It may not be the best suited for families on this list, but I think it's the best game on this list, and I think gamers are gonna wanna vote for that one specifically, as well as the critics as well.
Yeah, I took a little bit of a stab on this one by voting against Astrobot because I know it's going to be such a dominating game. But I would hope that people would think, it's going to get it, it's going to get its place to shine in other categories. So I went with Super Mario Party Jamboree.
Interesting.
The game that you would play with, a bunch of other people in your family. Like every other game is kind of like, more tuned towards being family friendly rather than like an actual game you play with your family.
Right, that makes sense.
That's why I lean that way. But yes, Astrobot clearly the best game in this list. So it should win this category and just about every other category it's in.
I love how I fucking just basically gave away all That's true.
I mean, you can give it away now because I'm not changing my votes are locked in. So I'm not gonna,
Same.
like,
My
adjust
votes
them
are
overnight.
my votes are locked in as well. Your turn, Days, for best fighting.
All right, best fighting, also known as the Lunar Droid category.
Indeed.
For best fighting, we have Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. What a title! Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, Multiverses, and Tekken 8. And I forgot what I voted for because I'm in the wrong document. Oops, undo that. I think I know where you're leaning in this one, so this is another one I actually changed. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It was between two games to me. I haven't played any of these. I'm not, not a huge fighting game person. Nothing against them. I just don't tend to lean towards them. And I've gone with Tekken 8. And I originally had selected Dragon Ball Sparking Zero because I know that was like really big when it came out. But I just think Tekken 8 is Tekken, so more people are probably going to go for it.
I have also gone Tekken 8 with this one as
I
well.
thought you might have. I maybe should have stuck with Dragon Ball, thinking that like, oh, you'll probably go Tekken. But if it is Tekken, like I think it's going to be, then I would just be throwing away potential points. So
Yeah, I have also gone Tekken 8 as well. I'm gonna move this over here while I do that. Let's see here. My turn. Locked in. Tekken 8 is what we both think is gonna win best fighting at the Game Awards on Thursday.
I can see Dragon Ball taking it, but yeah, I don't know about any of the others, especially not multiverses.
Best role-playing game. This one was hard. This one for me was really hard. But we're gonna go with reading them off now. And that is Dragon's Dogma 2, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and Metaphor Refantasio. So
all bangers.
All bangers. For sure. I went with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth though, because I think that it made the most. It not necessarily made the most impact. I think it's probably the they're all good, really. These are all good, but I think the ones that people are gonna vote for, like the Final Fantasy fans, are crazy. They are out of their goddamn minds. I'm one of them, and I think they're gonna clamor together and vote for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to win best role-playing game at the Game Awards.
Nice. It's a strong choice. I've gone a different direction. I mean, Final Fantasy is, I think it's the one game out of this list that I've actually played and beaten, and would be my pick, obviously, because I haven't played the others. But I just feel like recency bias and just the hype around the game, people might be leaning towards Metaphor Refantasio.
I want to play that game so bad too. I want to get that game so bad. Yeah, I could see any of these winning, honestly, Days. So this is anyone's game.
Yeah, I was thinking like even Like a Dragon has a good chance. I feel like Dragon's Dogma didn't, like, it was a bit mixed, a bit divisive.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, literally any of those could win. It's a tough category.
Manix, when is Final Fantasy gonna end? It's been the Final Fantasy like 16 times already.
It's never ending.
Yeah. The age old joke. I love it. It's your turn to read them off, I think, or is it my turn? I can't remember.
That is a good. No, I read fighting, so it's my turn. Okay. We are now up to Best Action Adventure Game. And the nominees are Astrobot, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Silent Hill 2, Star Wars Outlaws, and The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Man, this is like my category because I've actually played 4 out of 5 of these games. The only one I haven't played is the Nintendo one.
The only one I haven't played is Outlaws on this category.
Nice.
So we've covered the between both of
We
us
got
we've
them covered.
covered. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Astrobot being on this list is a little weird because I don't consider that like an action adventure game. Like, there's no platforming category, so it's like it's kind of a weird one. Let's make sure I've chosen the right thing. I'm looking at this being like, oh, this is a weird choice now. I have gone with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. That game
Interesting.
really rules.
That game is good. The game is
Yeah,
good.
I might be shooting myself in the foot here a bit by voting against Astrobot in this category, but taking a swing.
I think that's a good choice, honestly. I think that's a really good choice. It makes a lot of sense. Although I think Astrobot also makes a lot of sense, which is why I went with Astrobot in this category.
Nice choice. I think just voting for Astrobot in every category that it's in is not a bad strategy.
Yeah. Also, because
it's gonna win at least one of them, or at least a few of them.
Yes, Astrobot is just such a good game, such a good game, and when you said that it's may not be quite like an action adventure game, I got a little worried because I'm like, oh no, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? But I hope it's gonna be the winner, and I hope
it's just weird that it's like a platforming game, but there's no other category really for it, so it's the best category for it.
right. I'll
So I'm sure
go.
lots of people will still full vote for it.
Yeah. So best action game.
Yeah, we had action adventure. Now we got action.
I've played
Distinct categories.
I have played all of these games except the only time I played Stellar Blade was through the demo, and that's it.
Oh yeah.
And that is Black Myth Wukong. Oh wait, did I put my yeah, I put my thing in there. Okay. Black Myth Wukong, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Helldivers 2, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, Stellar Blade. So if I'm going based off of my own personal choice for best game here, it would be Warhammer Space Marine 2. That's not the choice I'm gonna pick for the Game Awards because I don't think it made enough splash to win that award. Basically,
No.
what I think is gonna win is Black Myth Wukong. Personally, I think that's the one that is gonna win the award just because of how much of a splash it made when it came out. I wish I could control shift like left arrow this, but I can't. There we go. So that's what I think is going to win this award. I don't really have a reason for it other than it made a huge cultural impact when it first came out with divisiveness and people being against it or for it. I think it made enough splash to be in people's minds still, which is why I think it was going to win this category.
It made a huge splash. It certainly did.
Yeah.
It's a good choice, which is why I have also made that choice.
Interesting.
Yeah, personally, best action game. I don't know. Call of Duty was really good. I don't even know what I would choose personally, but I think, like you said, Black Myth.
Honestly,
people were really hot on it.
Best Call of Duty in years. Best Call of Duty in years.
For sure. Like, I really love Helldivers, but I don't think it's gonna win this category. And I mean, Stellar Blade, maybe. I don't know. I haven't played it,
so. It's a little bit of here's Stellar Blade kind of thing. I personally don't remember too much about that game. It's just I
think Black Myth would, like, it might not get the awards in other categories that it's nominated in, so this is probably a good place for them to like award it, I would think.
Yeah.
Potentially.
You're probably right.
Yeah. But yeah, huge game, made a huge impact.
Definitely.
People seem to love it.
Definitely.
All right. Best AR/VR. And the nominations are Arizona Sunshine Remake, Asgard's Wrath 2, Batman Arkham Shadow, Metal Hellsinger VR, and Metro Awakening. It's a tough category because I haven't played a lot of VR, despite owning a VR. And so I'm basically just on people's, on podcasts that I've heard talking about stuff. And so the reason I've gone with Batman Arkham Shadow because I heard people talking about it. And I've not heard anyone talk about any of these other games in VR.
You know what's funny, Days?
Is that the exact same thing that you've done?
That's the exact same thing I've done.
Solid choice. Solid choice.
Batman Arkham Shadow.
We might end up having a few of the same votes. I'll just double check how many we got. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now that are the same.
Interesting. Oh boy. Imagine if it's what if it's a tie, Days. What if it's a tie?
Then we both have to do the forfeit.
We both have to give each other $10 gift cards.
We both have to give each other $5 to split the $10, and we have to both have the thing up, but only for 3 months each.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Oh my god. Oh, that's funny. All right, best mobile game. We got best mobile game now. We got AFK Journey, Balatro, Withering Waves, Zenless Zone Zero, and Pokemon TCG Pocket. So,
tough choices.
I went with Balatro. Because, come on.
I think you don't need to say much more, I don't think.
Come on. Even though
I kind of wish I'd gone with something else, but I also went with Balatro because it's one of the best games this year.
Yeah.
The only other game I've played is the Pokemon game, and that's a through and through mobile game. It's free to play. It has all the trappings of a mobile game. It's like you pick up, get your cards, and then you put it back down.
That could also help it win. Now that I think of now that you say that,
it's possible. It's more of a mobile game than Balatro is, but Balatro is the best game, and you can play it on mobile. So
that's true, and
it should win. It should win on Alliance side.
I personally I'm not the hugest Balatro fan. I think it's good. I think it's really good, but I think I got in too late after the hype, and once the hype died down, it kind of died down a little bit for me too. But I think it's a really, really good game. It's just not my personal favorite, but I think it's good. I think that's why I voted for it.
Different taste. Nice. I don't think we need to say much more on that because what more can you say? All right. Best debut indie game. We got best independent game, but this is best debut indie game.
Wait, did you say debut? Debut?
Yeah. Debut.
Debut.
Sorry, North America. Debut.
Just kidding, Diz.
It's the best debut indie game.
There you go. Best debut. There we go.
Nominations: Animal Well, Balatro, Manor Lords, Pacific Drive, and The Plucky Squire getting another nomination.
Yep.
I enjoyed The Plucky Squire well enough. It was fine. This is going to be funny because after my spiel about how good Balatro was, I am voting against it in this category. I feel like the best debut or debut indie game is Animal Well. It wasn't my favorite game. It wasn't my favorite game at all, but I enjoyed it well enough. No pun intended. But I think, they might look to give it some love in this category.
Interesting.
There is another category coming up.
It's funny you say that, Days. Another time, I voted for Balatro in this category, and I was gonna vote Animal Well, but I changed it to Balatro.
That's probably not a bad choice. It could sweep.
You feeling nervous, Days? You feel? No, I'm just kidding.
I am a little bit.
I'm a little nervous too, honestly.
I haven't been like last year. I was more confident with my picks because it seemed like there were some slam dunks. This year, it's like, man, these could go either way.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting. I just hope I don't pull what I did today and sleep through the whole fucking awards accidentally. I'll be so upset.
Yeah, I'll just have to. I'll have to stream it on my own. I couldn't do this stream on my own because I needed to have your picks.
I'm gonna. If I have to fucking stay up all night days, I will. I'll do it. I'm gonna be there.
You'll be asleep.
Yeah. All right. So next category. Is it your go or is it my go?
No, I just went. Remember, because I said debut.
Oh yeah, best. Sorry, Days. I'm sorry. Best independent game: Animal Well, Balatro, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, Neva, and UFO 50. Would you look at that, ladies and gentlemen? I went Balatro yet again. I think that with how much of a splash, I keep saying splash, and that's my go-to.
Hey, things make splashes.
My
Impact.
Games for Impact, Balatro.
Oh, that's coming up. Yeah, Balatro made a game for Impact. Yeah, I mean, there's some really well liked games in this category. Animal Well, of course, and was in the previous category. Lorelei, people seem to love, despite its difficulty. Never, I haven't heard too much about, and UFO 50 has been getting a lot of love, but I've also gone Balatro.
Interesting.
So I think they're gonna. That's why I went Balatro, and this one is the best independent game, but they'll give the best debut to Animal Well to like split it up, split the votes. If you're gonna give them one of them, give them the best debut as opposed to best independent.
Exactly.
But yeah, Balatro, a good chance to win either, if not both.
Interesting. I just gotta take my meds real quick. One sec.
No worries. We can take a short little, not break, but you can just take a moment while you do that.
Can you vamp for literally 2 minutes?
2 minutes? Oh, that's too long to vamp.
Okay, I'll go be right back. I'll go to be right back screen. One sec.
Maybe we're gonna do on a break.
Okay, BRB, everybody. isn't coming through. Now it's coming through. Now it's
Hello.
coming through. Hello. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon. And good night. Oh my God, my two faves. There she is.
It's Kitty. It's the feral.
It's the
Okay.
fairest of kitties. Hello, kitty.
See ya. All right, shall we jump straight back into the picks?
Indeed.
To best community support.
Best community support, indeed.
It's a tricky category to like sort of figure out what that actually means. Anyway, nominations: Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, Helldivers 2, and No Man's Sky. Now, all but one of these games came out prior to this year. Only one game came out this year.
Ah, that's a good point.
Which is interesting. I mean, I guess community support is kind of like tied into ongoing in some ways. But I've gone with Helldivers 2, which is maybe a risky pick because there was a lot of like they copped a lot of flack with the whole like PSN thing, which wasn't the Helldivers people, to be fair. It was Sony and PlayStation forcing that on them. But I guess it could have been communicated better. But I'm thinking more of like the continual like changes and updates and the way that sort of game sort of evolved and like the ongoing war stuff and the meta stuff with like talking about fighting for liberty on like Twitter and stuff,
right?
Which again, this category is sort of hard to summarize, like sort of nail down what it actually means. But I think there was a good community built around Helldivers, like maybe not even like necessarily from the devs, which was probably not applicable to this category, but it seemed like there was a cool, fun community around Helldivers too, which is why I chose it.
Good choice.
But I could be way off. I could just be, Helldivers was one of my favorite games that came out, so maybe I'm a little bit of bias, but hey, we'll see what happens.
That's a good choice, Jays.
Some good communities in these games, like Baldur's Gate 3. Got good. I think Baldur's Gate 3 won the community support last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Which
could be wrong.
Which is why I chose it for this year, because I thought. I thought that's not my personal pick. I think Final Fantasy 14 is my pick. Come on, that's Oh, Baldur's Gate. Yes, that's what it's called. It's called Baldur's Gate. I think Baldur's Gate's gonna win this too.
Voices are a bit quiet compared to the music.
I fixed it. I think I fixed it. How is it now, Kitty? How does the voices? How are the voices inside your head? Hopefully
I'll
they're
try
better.
to lean into the mic.
We'll lean right into the mic. How is that now, Kitty?
This is my radio voice.
You sound like Sean Connery. It's funny.
I think it's better now. All right, cool. Good old New Zealand Sean Connery. Famous New Zealander. I think Baldur's Gate is a good choice. Like I said, I'm pretty sure they won it last year. I could be wrong, but
I think they did. Yeah. I mean, wait, let me just add
just about any one of these games. This is a tough category because like I think all of these games have great communities and great support. So yeah, that's that'll be a contentious one. That's a good. That'll be some good points up for grabs in that one.
Right, Kitty. How's that? I fixed it again now. How's that now? Should be better now. It's not going to show up on the VOD, but I also forgot to unmute it. I guess I'll unmute it now for the VOD. Oh no, that's too much. Is it good now? Okay, perfect. What were you going to say, Days?
I was going to say we should go on to the next category.
Sounds good. Whose turn is it? I think it's your turn.
No, it's your turn. I just read the last one.
Okay, best. Oh yeah, you did. Best ongoing game. We got Destiny 2, Diablo 4, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, and Helldivers 2. Now, this might bite me in the ass because it's a bias of mine. And it's what I think I went with. I think I went with this last year as well.
Interesting.
And I think it won last year, and I could be wrong if it did or not, but I'm
I
going.
don't remember. I'll have to look it up.
I'm going Funtal. Yeah, that's not the one. Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 14. For this category is what I went with.
I was going to look that up real quick because I'm curious. Exactly what. I'll also double check the. So where are we? Best community support was Baldur's Gate, and we both got that wrong. And the best ongoing was Cyberpunk,
Interesting.
which you voted for and got right.
Oh shit! Really? Okay.
You picked it, got right. That's funny. So
Maybe
this
it
is
was the year
again
before.
like, yeah, maybe. So it's interesting that like the best ongoing and best community have similar games. You got Destiny 2 instead of Baldur's Gate, but and Diablo instead of No Man's Sky. But this is sort of like the inverse of the last category, where I would consider an ongoing game to be something that came out previously and has been updated and continuing into this year.
Right.
So having Helldivers 2 in there was a bit weird to me, even though it is an ongoing game, but the rest of them all came out in previous years.
Right. That makes sense.
So that's why I went with community support for Helldivers, even though the support is ongoing. These categories are kind of, intertwined somewhat.
Yes.
But I have gone with Diablo 4.
That's a damn good game. I started playing that again recently.
Because they've made a lot of changes to that game with the loot upgrade thing, and then obviously the DLC came out. It's really had a renaissance of sorts. I feel like Destiny 2 had the final shape, which was pretty well received as well. So
Mm-hmm.
Fortnite is just Fortnite, and Fortnite just keeps on going and going. So.
I feel like Destiny 2 had the good grace with the final shape, but then they fucking squandered it with how bad they treated their employees. Like with letting them go.
That's
and
true.
That's Sony. Yeah. That was more of a Sony decision, to be fair. But
again, that was Sony screwing up. But yeah, it might give Destiny 2 a bad taste in people's mouths. So
yeah, I think it gave a lot of people a bad taste in their mouth because I don't even want to play that game anymore.
I think I went with Fortnite last year, if I'm not mistaken. I did. Yeah, I went with Fortnite last year. So
interesting.
It did not win this year because I'll be mad. All right,
your turn.
It is my turn. Yes, games for impact. The nominees are Closer the Distance or Closer the Distance. Indica. Never. Life is Strange Double Exposure. Sinuous Saga, Hellblade 2, and Tales of Kinzera Zao. It's a tough category because I've not played any of these games. And I don't really know what games for impact means exactly.
It's basically like the games that had a profound good message, basically.
Right. So the one that I was the most aware of and sort of had an idea of what it was about was Tales of Kinzera Zao, which I didn't play because it came out around the same time as Prince of Persia: Lost Crown, and that's the one I decided to play. They're very similar.
I wish I could change my vote, honestly. Because I just remembering that game now, and it had a bit of a Game Awards tie-in too.
It did. It had a Game Awards mode. That's kind of why I leaned towards it, because I thought like people were aware of it because of was it Game Awards or Summer Game Fest? Or
it was one of those.
But it was a Keighley joint.
It was definitely a Keighley joint.
I think
Keighley funding there. I'm not gonna say there's Keighley funding there, but there might be some Keighley funding there.
But I just think people will be more aware of it for that reason.
Exactly.
And I feel like Hellblade 2 was pretty poorly received. I don't think people are voting for that. And Life is Strange. I don't know if just enough people haven't played it because it's only just come out. So it's kind of like recency biased, but against it because not enough people would have had time to experience it and know what it's about.
Definitely.
So, but I guess maybe people didn't play Tales that much, but we'll see.
So
but yeah, it's a tough one to choose.
I went with Neva for this category.
Nice.
Just because I played Grease or however you
Mhm.
pronounce it back in
Yeah.
2020 or whatever, and that game hit me hard. And I think a game from that studio is known to be sort of like a sort of
A game for impact.
a game for impact. Thank you. It's definitely
Yeah.
meant to be a game for impact for sure. That's why I went with it.
That's a good choice. I think that's a good shout. It's a very good
Mhm.
chance.
That's why I went with Neva. So my turn to read them off. Let's see. Innovation in accessibility. So this is a category I don't know too much about because I don't have any physical disabilities. I do have some mental disabilities, but I don't have any physical disabilities. But either way, I went with I should probably read the category first. We have Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Diablo 4, Dragon Age the Veilguard, Prince of Persia the Lost Crown, Star Wars Outlaws. So just hearing from people talk about it and all that, I went with Diablo 4 just because that's kind of like
Yep.
what everyone's sort of been talking about with that game. It has like a lot of accessibility options. All of these do really, but I remember Diablo 4 having just a absolute metric shit ton of good accessibility options, which is perfect for that game.
Yeah.
And that's why I
That's
went
a
with
good
Diablo
choice.
4.
I had gone with Diablo 4 and I changed it like at the last minute.
Oh.
I don't know why. I saw the word innovation and it made me think of the Prince of Persia like pinning the things on like I know that's
Oh.
not really what this category is about, but it just
I
I
see
don't know.
what you mean. I see what you mean.
I went with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. But yeah, I had tossed up between that and Diablo 4. Yeah, I think it's like colorblind options and stuff, and just readable text and that kind of thing for people that are visually impaired. Like you, I'm mildly visually impaired, but like not to the extent where I really need accessibility options that much. So
Right.
I don't really ever have to worry about that, thankfully. But so it's a tough one to choose because I'm not really exposed to that, like you said. So sort of going off the vibes of what people seem to say.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. You want to read the next one?
Oh yeah, I think Diablo is probably a good shout because that was my initial thought. I can read the next one. All right, best performance. Now we're getting into the real big ones.
Oh yeah.
Brianna White, who is from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and she plays Aerith Gainsborough. Hannah Tell, Life is Strange Double Exposure. She plays Max Caulfield. Humberly Gonzalez. Hopefully, I've said that somewhat right. From Star Wars Outlaws, and they play Kay Vess. Luke Roberts, Silent Hill 2, plays James Sunderland, and Melina Jurgens, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, playing Senua. I've played 3 of the games on this list, and whilst I thought KVS and James Sunderland were played very well by their respective actors, I think you can't go past the performance of Brianna White as.
Oh no!
Oops.
I also picked Brianna White.
Solid choice. Yeah, I think it was probably between her and maybe Senua. I mean, I think Hannah Tell did a great job as Max as well, from what I saw of Birdie playing that game.
Right.
But I think people have said good things about the performance in Hellblade, other than the game itself not being great. But
Yeah.
the performance was really good.
Definitely.
But I think Brianna is probably a front runner in this one, if I had to say. But we will see. But
So I don't have room for mine, or do I?
Oh, just put it over. It'll just overlap. It's fine.
Brianna White.
You can copy and paste mine if you like.
There we go.
We'll just do that.
Perfect.
That works too.
My turn. My turn to read them off.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. Oh, 6 left.
So
go for it.
I thought I did pick Astrobot in every category that it's in, but I didn't. I thought I did for some reason, but I didn't. I was wrong. I forgot. I was wrong about my own opinion.
It's in a lot of categories. It's easy to forget.
Yeah. So, best audio design, we have Astrobot, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, and Silent Hill 2. Now, this may not be the best game in this category. In fact, it's probably the worst game in this category. But in terms of audio design, what is this? Which game is known for that? And that is Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2.
Yep.
Is what I went with in this category. Because, come on, I mean, that's what that game is known for. That's literally what that game is known for. And it's also known for busting and making me feel good. You're right, Kitty. Indeed.
Kitty knows. Yeah, that's a solid choice. Solid choice. I was tempted to go that way, but I did not. So the game that I've gone with that everyone has been, well, maybe not everyone, but I've heard good things about the audio design and people have been talking about it, is Call of Duty Black Ops 6.
Oh, damn it. Yeah, that's got that like Tempest audio or whatever. Damn.
It does have, and it is the recency and the fact that it's well received.
Yeah, I know, like, got it there.
Like if you're gonna pick Hellblade in any category, this is gonna be the one you'd pick it in.
Definitely.
So that probably would have been my second choice. Actually, the audio in Silent Hill 2 is also excellent. So
yeah,
even Astrobot. I mean, these are all very good. So that's a tough one.
Definitely, that's a good choice, Days. That's a really good choice.
Yeah, and as is yours. So we'll see what happens.
You want to read?
All right. Next one, best score in music. Jumping off audio. Best score in music. Nominees: Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Metaphor ReFantasio, Silent Hill 2, and Stellar Blade. I feel like this might be one where we vote the same. But we'll see, because I don't really have too much to say other than the audio and the music, especially. I'm basing this more on. Oh, sorry, it's not audio, it's score. But just the music in this game is second to none.
Final Fantasy. For sure, Final Fantasy.
Got it.
Yeah,
you got to go Final Fantasy. If it's a music category, I'm picking Final Fantasy just about every time.
You know what, Days? Me too. Because go ahead.
No, right. I didn't say anything. Go ahead.
I was gonna say me too. Final Fantasy Rebirth is also my choice for this category.
Yeah, I feel like the music in Astrobot wasn't as good as the music in Astro's Playroom. Like the music in that game was awesome. The music in Astrobot was good, but it just didn't like hit the same for me. I also haven't played Metaphor. And Silent Hill 2 had good audio, but it has some good music from the original, I guess, but it's, it doesn't have as much as Final Fantasy.
It's fun. Final Fantasy is all about the music too, anyways, right? Like, it's the one of the most known things.
The big orchestral scores and stuff.
Thanks to the wonderful, like back in the day, it was Nobuo Uematsu. I'm probably butchering his name, but he's the wonderful composer from those games and made a lot of great music. Music, I should say.
Music.
Now I'm pulling a Days. Debut. I'm just kidding. Debut. I want to say that was like a thing from a few years ago when we would joke about something that you said. I can't remember. Something Napalm joked about.
Everyone's always making fun of the way we say things. It's just how we talk, man. It's so good. It's so good.
Next category. Here we go.
Take it away.
The big boys. The big ones. Best art direction. For outstanding creative and or technical achievement in artistic design and animation. We have Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree, Metaphor ReFantasio, and Neva. Now, I'm kind of biting myself, kicking myself in the ass, because I kind of want to change it very last minute right now, but I can't.
Well, If you really want to change it, I feel like you can because I haven't given you my one yet.
Okay.
We haven't locked it in yet.
Okay.
I feel like that's allowed.
I'm gonna
I'll
change
allow it.
Okay, Elden
until
Ring.
you've said it on the thing, it's unless I've said mine already and
You
want to
haven't.
change it
You
based on that.
haven't.
Yeah, but I haven't said mine on this one, so that's fine.
I was originally gonna go Astrobot, but I'm gonna change it to Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Interesting.
Last minute change. Just because I think that the From Software games are, really known for known for being difficult, first of all, but also known for their artistic design. They're just fantastic art direction in those games. Just wonderful design, and the world design is just beautiful. Some of the creatures and everything is just stupendously just out there
the
in
art
terms
in that
of
game is insane. Like
that's what I went with.
Very, very striking. That is also what I've gone with. For that last minute change. I thought that was a bit of a bit of a long shot one because it's DLC, because it all the other ones came out this year. But for every reason you said, those games are just known for their stunning visuals.
Definitely.
The other one that I was tossing up was Never as a real long shot, but I just don't think enough people would have played that. And Black Myth Wukong was another one that's potentially could be in there, but I think Elden Ring's if it's not going to win any other categories, that's nominated. I think this is probably the one that it might.
That's why I kind of changed it.
Yeah, that's fair. You didn't know that I'd chosen
I
it.
had no idea, honestly, dude. I thought you were gonna go Astrobot or Black Myth.
Yeah, those are the heavy hitters. Yeah, great minds think alike, I guess. All right, best narrative for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game. We have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Metaphor Refantasio, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, and Silent Hill 2. Interesting ones. This is one that maybe I've leaned too heavily on what I want to win, maybe, because I have gone Silent Hill 2.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
One, interesting. Yeah, that is a great story. The story is still the same from the game that came out in 2001. So, one of the greatest video games of all time, in my opinion. One of my favorites, at least. So it's hard to me to look past that as one of the best stories. Yeah, like I think maybe it could be Metaphor because I've heard good things about that storytelling, and so I'm thinking I might be taking a hit on this one, but Silent Hill's great, so I hope it gets some love.
I hope so too. I hope so too, but that's not what I went with. I went with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I haven't finished that game, so please don't spoil it. Spoil the ending for me if you finished it, because I plan to finish it, and I know they changed the ending. I'm pretty sure because they said it's different. I don't want to say anything else. But yeah, because I remember people being really upset about that apparently. But I'm not gonna. I can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Blah, 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 blah.
I couldn't tell you what happened. Even though I've beaten that game, I couldn't remember the details. I know the broad strokes, but yeah, I couldn't go into details. But
I'm close to the end of that game, so
it's a good story. So yeah, that's definitely a good shout.
I went with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to win that category.
Yeah, I think Silent Hill 2 is probably a bit of a long shot on that one.
So is it my turn to read, or is it yours?
As much as I love it. Yes, your turn.
My turn. Best game direction, awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game design, in game direction and design. And the nominees are Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erd Tree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor Refantasio. So, I went with what I think is going to win and what I think is my personal choice, and that is Astrobot. Just the amount of ideas that they have in that game, the amount of gameplay sort of ideas they've done. Oops, wrong button. Just all the ideas they have is really good, and they did a really good job in sort of presenting the different platforming levels the way they are. Like there's that one level where you can go between being small and big, and the world is small and big. I thought that was absolutely fucking incredible.
It was great, and then they don't use it again for the rest of the game.
Yeah, but they have other ideas
Just
that they use.
One level.
No, but that's the thing, Days. That's the thing, Days. They have other ideas in the game that are in the later levels that are like so fucking good that like I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like there's so many like good ideas in that game. But they should have used the big small level again too as well. But that's my choice for that category.
That is a very well put argument and a great choice. And now I'm wishing that I had on that choice because I have chosen out of left field Metaphor ReFantazio, a game I haven't played.
Shit. Okay.
Because I don't know. I just feel like people might lean towards it for something.
Interesting. Interesting.
And so
it's a good choice. It's a good choice because it's that type of game. It's like a game that has a lot of direction and story, right?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I mean I honestly don't even know that much about it. I've just heard people talking about it a little bit. So
if it's anything like Persona 5 Royal, I can totally see it winning this category.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's basically what I'm basing that on. But yeah, that's a bit of a swing for the fences on that one. That was a tough category.
Yeah. So it's your turn, Dave.
My turn, and it's the last category, the big one. Numero uno, Game of the Year.
Game of the Year, everybody. Get your hype horns out. The GOTY, the Game of the Year.
As in the last category, Astrobot, Balatro, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Metaphor ReFantazio. And so I chose Metaphor ReFantazio for the previous category because I chose for this category Astrobot. So I think most people will be picking that for their Game of the Year. Basically everything you've said in every other category that you've voted for it. But I feel like they're going to do the thing where they pick one game to win Game of the Year and they pick another game to win the game direction as like a runner-up kind of prize.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
I think initially I'd even chosen Black Myth Wukong as a real sort of out of the box pick because there was so much talk around it and so many people loved it, but then I doubted myself and I thought, oh no, people probably en masse would prefer Astrobot. Yeah, that's just an amazing game that everybody seems to love, and you can't really say a bad thing about it. Even if you don't love it, you can't say a bad thing about it.
Definitely,
it's it's just fun. It's just good vibes.
Astrobot is really a game about like also the history of PlayStation as well, and
that is true. Yeah, we haven't even mentioned that. Yeah,
and it's like the 30th anniversary of PlayStation this year. So I think that it's just such a fucking good homage to the games that have been in of the history of PlayStation. Definitely. And just
gaming. I didn't even consider that the nostalgia play.
I honestly feel like it's a celebration of video games in general. I feel like it's a celebration of video games in general, and it
definitely.
It's honestly a little emotional how much of a celebration it is in terms of like just some of the memories you have of the memories I personally have with a lot of these games, which is why I also went with Astrobot to win Game of the Year.
I figured you might.
Yeah, as well.
Based on your previous comments.
Yeah. So I think Astrobot is going to win Game of the Year. You know, we could both be wrong, but honestly, man, I think Astrobot's going to do it. It may not be my
that's one that I'm pretty hopeful for.
It may or may not be my personal Game of the Year. I haven't decided yet.
It's not my personal Game of the Year. No, it's on my list, but it's not. It's in like the middle.
Yeah, we should do like I'm not gonna set it in stone or anything, but maybe we can do a little special at the end of the month where we pick our games of the year, our personal ones. That'd be kind of neat. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be fun.
No, nothing set in stone, guys. So don't like look forward to it or anything. But I'm just saying it out of nowhere. But we'll talk out off stream about that. No, neither we're no for sure gonna happen kind of thing. So don't worry. But yeah, that looks like a list.
That's we've done our predictions.
Yes, they have been locked in. I'm gonna Control S this.
I think you have to. I think it's what it
says. Yeah, it saves automatically. There we go. Oops. Oh, that's not.
How many have we got that are the same picks? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh no!
6, 7, 8, 9.
Oh god, no.
10, 11. 11 of 25 are the same picks. So
I think we are the same person, Dave. Like I said in your Discord.
It's pretty simple. And I think even the ones where we didn't pick the same, it was like we were, mostly tossing between two, and it was like one picked one picked the other.
Yeah.
But that's pretty good. Like I thought, we might have a lot of different picks because it was hard to pick. So
right.
I think we picked the same in that many categories. I think there's 25 from memory.
Yeah.
I think it was 25 last year, not including the ones we didn't vote on, the content creator esports stuff.
Right.
Which I guess means if there's 25 and we picked 11 the same, there's 14 that we haven't picked the same.
Okay, perfect.
So we're really battling on those 14. But
and you know what, Dave?
See if we
We actually made this longer than last year because last year we only did it for like 40 minutes. I think we're getting better as content creators. We're getting better. We're getting
better at talking about stuff.
Better at talking about things, and I want to congratulate you for that. I want to congratulate myself for that because I feel like we've actually made a good special out of this because last year we did it was like 30, 40 minutes. We only did. Oops. There we go.
You did do your Twitch thing at the start as well, which added a little bit of time.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, but that's all good.
Yeah.
No, I had a lot of fun going through this list and picking my predictions.
Yeah, this was great, dude. I'm gonna.
I look forward to watching the Game Awards and checking off all the ones that I get right.
Me too, man. Let me give you a shout out. Days _
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this with me. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to it.
I look forward to
little annual tradition that we've got going on now. It's officially a tradition. We've done it twice.
Indeed, it is now a tradition. Thank you everybody for coming out for the annual Lunar Days in Lunar Predict the Game Awards. Tune in this Thursday, so long as I don't sleep the day away like I did today, for for the Game Awards 2024 with the Keeleys. I'm gonna be so excited for the Game Awards and everything that's going on. I'm probably not gonna be able to sleep at all. I'll be up. I'm hoping my fucking copium is they Valve does some tease there, but I'm doubting it. There's been a lot of rumors lately about that stuff, but we'll see. Either way, I'm gonna we'll use these ones, these moon hearts. We'll use those.
Sounds good.
For our little shout out for
the moon and dog.
Yeah.
So I think last year I won with 15. I think I said, and you had 13. So let's hope we can improve.
Yeah,
it's tricky, so we might not. I feel like it's harder this year.
One sec. I'm literally
categories.
Yeah. I'm literally typing out. So if you guys have a subscription, you can do this first one for the category, for not the category. I'm so used to saying category. For the raid message. So if you have a sub to the channel, like if you're giving me $5 a month, you can use the moon robot thing. I wish you could do both, but Twitch is weird about subs and all that. And then we got the hearts for the non-subs and all that.
Who are you rating?
Birdie, anxious Birdie.
Birdie is rating out right now. Just so
oh shit, yeah, she is. Oh boy, I hope she's not rating me.
It doesn't say. She's just posted her raid messages.
Okay,
I don't think she's actually started it, but
interesting. Let's see what she's doing. Let's see what Birdie's doing. What's Birdie doing? Okay, she's rating Jellyfish. She's rating Jellyfish Queen. I'm gonna rate Jellyfish Queen too.
Sounds good. Yeah, she's rating Jelly. Cool.
We're gonna raid Jelly. Get Jellyfish the old raidy poo. That's what they say, right? We'll give Jelly.
That's what the cool kids say.
That's what the cool kids say. You're damn right. So copy one of those messages, y'all. Either if you have a sub, use the robots. If you have not a sub, use the hearts. Either way, I just appreciate your support. Either way, it doesn't matter if you're subbed or not. I just wish Twitch would let me do both, but they don't. I just care about you guys, and I want you guys to have a really good night. And we'll go say hi to the Jellyfish Queen. Days, thank you so much for the annual tradition of doing this with me. It's been
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, man.
Always a pleasure.
It's been an honor having you. And this Thursday,
a couple of days.
Better believe it. We are gonna go.
We'll see it.
And see you later. Bye, everybody.
Bye.